Hey everybody, welcome to Cars with Cocktails, a show where we combine two things that go perfectly together, drinking and driving. I am your host, Paul Barrett, joined by my co-host, Max Wobbles. And today we're going to talk about 90s cars. Amazing 90s cars. So what are we drinking today?
Today, we're mixing it up a little bit and forsaking our namesake a bit. We have a beer from Ass Clown. They are local to us, right down the road. This is the Wasted Time. I believe it's actually a pale ale. It's barrel aged in oak, and it was on special.
I can see the oak flavor to it. I actually like it. Max knows, for the viewers at home, but Max knows I'm not an IPA fan. So I'm sure that's why he probably didn't get an IPA, because he does like IPAs.
It is specifically. And they have a lot of really good ones there too. And they had a new one that was like a citrus one that sounded really good. I was like, oh, I'm going to get that. And I was like, oh, Paul hates IPAs, so he would be really upset with me. Although I should have done that to get you back for that peanut butter abomination from last week. If I had thought of that, we would be drinking something along those lines.
It would have been retribution.
It would have been. But no, I said specifically, I'm looking for something for me and someone who doesn't like IPAs to drink. And they're like, well, try this. It's discontinued. Like, we've moved on from this one. It's like, it was a seasonal one. So it's on special if you want to get it in a 4-pack. And so,
what do you think of the flavor?
I like it. It's, you can definitely taste the oak on it a little bit. It's got a little bit of the, like, I guess, hoppiness that like an IPA would have. But like really like light, dulled down a lot. So
this hoppiness doesn't bother me. It's the IPAs that are like really just gross tasting.
To be fair, I did try this before.
You did? Okay.
They gave me a sample. So I made sure that it wasn't going to be too
like gross,
too bitter for you.
I like it. It feels very much like a summer-y beer to me. It's kind of light.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
I like it. And Ass Clown, I like that place a lot. They're, like I said, they're right around the corner from us. And they have a really cool vibe. You've never gone there yet, have you?
No, never been there.
Yeah, cool place.
Yeah.
Not sponsored. Hashtag
not sponsored. So today, 90s cars. So the plan kind of is for us to talk about 90s cars. Originally, we were talking about maybe doing our favorites. And then because
they're all my favorites. This is an era that's near and dear to my heart. I'm a product of the 90s.
You are. For me, 90s cars are, I think especially, and that's why I was like, when I was looking at a list of the different cars in the 90s, I was like,
oh my God, this is awesome.
Yes, but I was like, okay, I am a little bit older than you. And when I graduated high school in 2001. So when I got my license,
Fast and Furious time frame.
It was Fast and Furious time frame, but it was 2000 when I was getting my license and buying a car. So any car that was reasonably affordable to me was probably an early 90s. By the way, my first car was not from the early 90s. It was much older than that, 86. But those were the cars that I was like aspiring to be able to have because I couldn't afford a $4,000 car. So I just, was hoping I could have a $4,000 car,
let alone something real cool.
Yes, for not a new car that's cool, but an older cool car would have been awesome. Yeah. So, part of me felt like, okay, maybe this list feels so cool to me because of the nostalgia around that.
Oh, that's totally what it is. I mean, some of this stuff is objectively cool that we're going to talk about, but like, there's some cars in this list that maybe, at least for me, that maybe aren't all that actually awesome. But they're near and dear to my heart from being the cars you see when you're out and about and how cool it were.
Okay, well, why don't...
Example, MR2.
Oh, it's on my list.
Yeah, like not the weird spidery like newer ones, which I think those 2000s. Were 2000s. Yeah. But like super, super cool cars. Yeah. They were mid-engine. They have the pop-up up and down headlights.
Turbo.
They had turbo ones. Mm-hmm. They had the... I feel like 90s, the later ones were the peak MR2.
Yeah,
because the early ones
were gross,
were ugly and small, and felt very much like a weird Japanese car.
They felt like a Fiero knockoff, is what they felt like.
To be fair, they were a weird Japanese car.
Yes,
but then the second gen MR2, I don't know what the designations are. I bet there's probably like a chassis code or something. But those are freaking sweet.
Yes,
back when Toyota actually had cool cars. And obviously, there's the Supra, which you love.
Yes.
And I don't really care much for.
Yeah.
But it's objectively cool.
Gen 4 Supra, because the Gen 3 was also a 90s car.
Yeah, the Gen 3, I think that's got pop-up headlights, so it's automatically better.
Anything with pop-up headlights is cool.
It is. They're in the 90s had a lot of those.
Yes, for sure. Give me one more. I think we should do a few each of going down the list of cars. Just a random, another 90s car that you like.
Well, there's the first gen Viper came out in the 90s.
It did, yes.
Which was just this brutal beast of a truck, basically. And have you ever been under a Viper?
I know they have ladder frames, yeah.
It looks exactly like a pickup truck, especially with the side pipes and stuff. It's ridiculous. But the early cars didn't even have exterior door handles.
Remember that?
Yeah, they didn't. That was like the first. I think it was like 99 or whatever. Whatever the first year was.
I thought it was earlier than that.
It's like
96 or 97.
I don't know. Whatever the very first year.
It may have even been like 94.
Yeah, and then they switched to they had the side pipes early on. They switched to like a center exhaust on some of them. On the ACRs, I think they had an ACR version. But then another 90s car that is not, it's my other category where it's objectively not cool, but it's kind of cool from back then, was the Neon ACR.
Yeah, yes. So funny story about Neons. One of my best friends had a Neon, and he was all about, and he had the earlier gen Neon before the SRT4, but the SRT4 was out at that point. So he was all about trying to make his Neon cool, which obviously they were tremendous piles of shit.
Well, I think that the SRT4 was a 2000s car, I think.
Yes. Yeah. 04, I think, was the first year.
Yeah, or early 2000s, something like that. But, the ACR was the previous gen Neon.
Yep.
Which I don't know if they were two doors. I think the ACRs were two doors. They were like super good.
I'm sure they were, yeah.
SCCA cars. They had like the stiffer suspension and all that stuff. But it's like super cool that they had like all these little modded versions of these cars already.
I had one 90s car that I thought of that isn't one of them. It kind of fits in with the Neon ACR is the Subaru SVX.
Oh. How does that fit in with
because it's a
terrible car?
It's a weird car that like is kind of cool.
Those things like made a bunch of power for back in the day. They were all automatic. I'm pretty sure they were all automatic. They all had this super, super cool, weird side windows that like were like 6 inches tall that you could like. You had to get your drink through sideways if you like went through the drive-through.
That mostly is the thing about this SVX that I think is most notable is it doesn't even have that attractive of a body line. It's like an ugly version of the Ford Probe, which also wasn't even the best car.
Yeah, the Probe is definitely better looking than the SVX.
Yes.
The SVX is kind of cool looking.
Yes.
But nobody would ever, well, I mean, I'm sure
It's
there's
in a
some
weird
people
way
that would say they're attractive, but I don't think they're attractive even a little bit. But they're kind of cool.
Yes.
I'll give them that. You can be cool without being good looking.
Yeah. So along those lines, I mean, there's, to me, you mentioned the Supra, the Gen 4 Supra, which I think is the obvious one. FDR X7s were also 90s cars. 3000 GTs, 300Zs. Those are all kind of, to me, those four cars, the Supra, the RX-7, the 3000 GT, and the 300Z, all kind of fit in the same category.
Well, I feel like 90s is peak Japanese car. Like that is peak. The European cars, there were some cool ones. You got like the E36 M3 was a sweet car.
Right.
The Euro ones were much better than the US ones, but which I think we've actually talked about in a different episode maybe.
So you talk about the lightweight one.
Well, no, the lightweight was cool. But then there's the Euro ones had like a different engine and individual throttle bodies, more power and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
The lightweight was a cool E36, but then you have the E30 M3 is also, I think those are like 1990, like very early 90s. Those are cool. Everybody loves them. They look awesome. Underpowered, it's kind of not the point of that car. But the Euro cars, like they're not as exciting to me from the 90s. Well, you got the Lotus Esprit Twin Turbo.
That was on my list. To me, Lotus Esprit Twin Turbo is probably a bucket list car for me as far as owning it. And I have a few like 90s cars that are on the bucket list. The Gen 4 Supra is one of them.
I've got a bunch.
The Mercedes 190e Evo.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Is also one that I think in the German category that fits not only the bucket list, but objectively cool.
I'm pretty sure those cars have a dogleg first gear, meaning that first gear is down and towards you.
Yeah.
Which is like super weird.
Yeah.
And race car, which 914s are that way too. But
I think the 190e Evos have like skyrocketed in value.
Oh yeah, they're absurd. But even the 190e 2.3 Cosworth, which is the same car, the non-Evo
version, yeah,
which is just looks like an 190e, but has like a similar engine, same gearbox. Like it's almost like an AMG, but it wasn't. I don't think they really did AMGs then. AMG, I think, was a separate company before. It's like a tuner thing.
It was, yeah, separately.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not up on the history of Mercedes.
Yes, that AMG was at one point a separate company, which is, ironically, we're in the Volkswagen and Audi space. What Stasis was trying to do when they did their thing that eventually crumbled.
And collapsed underneath them.
Yes. So yeah, but Cosworth was doing all kinds of stuff. They had, escort stuff. And there's a bunch of
there's so many cool Cosworths.
90s. Yeah, they had a bunch of 90s cars that were really cool, but most of them were not stuff that we ever had here.
No, you got the Escort Cosworth was awesome. I think there's another Cosworth, the Sierra, but the Sierra I think was a late 80s car maybe, and those are kind of
Sierra. I don't even know what that is.
They're like an uglier version of the Escort. Sierra was a like Euro car.
A Ford?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a Ford Sierra.
It was like a Polo probably competitor or something like that.
No, it is bigger than that. It was the same as, which this is another car actually. I guess it would be probably in the 90s. Maybe 80s. The Mekur XR14.
The XR, yeah.
That's the Sierra. In Europe. It was a Ford, not a Mekur.
Mekur, yeah.
However you say that. But those are the same car. And those are kind of cool.
I feel like that's 80s. It may be into the 90s.
That's what I'm saying.
I think
that was like borderline, like late 80s.
Like a Nissan Pulsar.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you even know. Do you even know what a Nissan Pulsar is?
Yeah. But then, so also 90s is the era of the DTM cars.
Well, yes.
No, sorry.
DSM.
That's what I meant. There is some cool DTMs like the 190E and the M3.
But I knew you were thinking of DSM.
DSMs, where you got the Eagle Talon, the Chrysler Conquest, the Mitsubishi Eclipse. All basically the same thing.
Same car, yeah. That was back when Chrysler and American car companies thought they could just rebadge the same fucking car and call it a new name and idiots would buy it.
Circling back to the neon.
Yeah,
you had the Chrysler Neon, the Plymouth Neon, and the Dodge Neon. They didn't even change the name.
Yes, at least with all the other cars, they changed the names with, like, they had the Dodge. My parents had an Intrepid, so they had the Dodge Intrepid, the Chrysler Concourse, the Eagle Vision, and the Plymouth
Rock?
I don't remember the name of the Plymouth one, but there was a Plymouth one, too.
Was the Prowler in the 90s?
It's on my list.
I forgot all about Plymouth.
1997 was the Plymouth Prowler. It for sure is a piece of shit car, but
that doesn't matter.
But it was cool.
You saw a Prowler, you're like, holy shit, look at that.
Wow, that guy is really doing something in life. He's got a fucking Prowler.
I still think that when I see one today. I see a Prowler, I'm like, damn.
Yeah, he's doing something.
Yeah, it's probably not something right, but he's doing something.
Which one's more impressive, a Prowler, a Thunderbird, or an SSR?
Obviously, the Prowler. SSRs. They had the later ones actually, which this is in the 2000s. You're straying us off course.
We went way out of the 90s now.
The SSR,
like mid 90s or mid 2000s.
You could get one with a bigger engine later on that were actually like
quick,
decent, but. Yeah. Those are terrible vehicles.
Speaking of trucks that were quick, the Typhoon
and the Cyclone
were those. So my first car was a '86 GMC Jimmy.
Those are one of those cars is on my bucket list,
and which essentially was the same thing as it was an older version of what the Typhoon was.
There's a lot different.
Well, it was a lot different body style. One of my best friends had a newer version of the Blazer that was a 4.3 that was pretty quick, just being a 4.3. So I actually have never driven a Typhoon, but I'm sure they were fast for the time.
I had somebody when I was in high school. I knew somebody who had a
Cyclone's the truck.
Yeah, Cyclone. He had
Typhoon's
the S10 version.
the Blazer. Right.
Yeah, he had the S10 version. And that thing made all sorts of cool turbo noises. And it wasn't... My GTI was just as fast as it was, but
nostalgia
that was
cool.
so much cooler.
Yeah.
And you know the thing with those trucks is they had like a capacity in the bed of like 400 pounds.
Oh shit, was that
Yeah,
low?
it was like ridiculously low. Like you could...
Why? Because the springs, or
I don't know exactly why, but they were like, they had like no capacity in the bed. I think it was something to do with how they had the suspension in that to be grippy.
That would make sense, yeah. To make them not just super stiff and hard, it'd probably handle a little bit better. I mean, not that a truck handled super great.
Those things were so cool. That was definitely on my list. Those things have also shot up crazy in value.
Really?
So they didn't make a ton of them.
Well, yeah, they didn't sell a ton of them either. I mean, it was just one of those things. It was an expensive, like
Pickup truck.
yeah, like
And it wasn't even a big pickup. It was an S10.
right.
You know, like
The Lightning at least was like the Lightning was a good truck.
was the Lightning 90s?
It was 2000s.
Nah.
Yeah, it would have been on my list. I'm pretty sure the first Lightning was into the early 2000s. If you made me guess,
I'm pretty sure that's a 2000s body
I would
style.
say 01 would be the first Lightning. If you made me guess off the top of my head, I don't know that for sure.
That would make sense. Yeah.
My
cousin had one of those. Those were cool.
Other vehicles, I think, with the rise of the Tacoma and 4Runner were in the 90s. For being substantial vehicles in the truck market. I think that was, I don't think before then, was it T100?
Yeah, the T100 was a bigger truck.
Yeah, the T100 was a bigger truck. What was the one that came before Tacoma? That was the
I don't know.
there was another model. It was kind of a joke truck, whereas the Tacoma was kind of the first, like, I think, truck that was considered really a truck from Toyota. And then obviously the 4Runner, which they still hold their value to this day.
So you also, going back to my whole thing about Japan really being in their prime time, you have the Skylines, the R32s the R33s.
I don't know. Does that count? They weren't in the U.S. They are now.
Half the cars that I've listed are better not in the U.S. And I think that the 90s, we're just talking about 90s. They're 90s cars.
Yeah. I guess for me,
the Escort Cosworth is in the U.S. The Evo Mercedes aren't U.S. They're gray market cars.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Most of them aren't. Well, there's so few of them that exist anyway.
Right. So
I think I did it. I don't remember what I saw. I think I saw one sold for like $90,000.
That seems like that would probably be low.
Is it? Are they more than that?
I'm pretty sure. But then, like, you know, there's also going back to the realm of regular stuff in Europe. You got the 964s or 90s and the 993s or 90s. Those are
I didn't go into
cars.
Porsches because I kind of felt like, I don't know, in my head, I was like, okay, here are things that I thought were attainable, even though I couldn't afford them. That's the stuff that matters to me, except for the Lotus Esprit, which is kind of more of like a way up there supercar.
Yeah. Well, even the Celicas in the 90s I thought were cool then.
What are they? Celica
the GT4.
4S? Yeah, GT4. There's four-wheel steer Celica.
Everything had four-wheel steer. You got the Prelude had four-wheel steer.
Yes. The Prelude is actually, that's a big one because I desperately wanted a Prelude. Civic SI is on my list because that was the first really good Civic SI was the mid-90s ones.
ITR for me. Integra Type R.
Well, yeah, that's on my list too.
Oh my goodness.
Integra Type R.
That is a bucket list car for me. Want one.
Really?
Yes.
That's a bucket list car?
100%. I love those things so much. It's got to be yellow.
Yeah, I mean, I like the white ones though too.
The white ones are okay, but if I were to own one,
I feel like you get a GSR though and be like kind of just as happy with it as you would be with a Type R.
Nah.
And
that's not. It's just not the same.
It certainly isn't the same.
That's the modern equivalent of you could get a GTI and be just as good as they are. You'll be just as happy. That's my feelings on the matter.
Maybe. I guess.
There's
I feel
so much different about
much,
the Type R.
How much is a Type R now?
A lot.
I know they're expensive. Like, what do they go for? 35 grand?
For one that's like
Decent?
okay.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even call it decent.
Not super nice.
Yeah, the like low mileage ones and stuff go for like ridiculous money.
Like 60, 70 grand.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Because they were, I don't know how many they made, but the we know from our world, the Mark IV R32 goes for crazy money. I can't imagine what.
I think they made a decent number of them, but they all got like super modded and stolen
And ragged the fuck out.
Yeah, so there aren't like
the nice ones are rare.
There aren't that many left on those. But like I clearly didn't do too much research on this, but was the RSX a 90s car?
No,
That was
RSX was way later. 06, I think the RSX was.
They can't possibly be that new.
2006. I would maybe 2005.
Wow.
I would place a wager on that.
Okay, I'm sure. I mean,
I'm curious. Look it up. Look up the first year of the Acura RSX. The Type S was actually a decent car. I actually had somebody who I knew pretty well who had one. They weren't bad cars, but they also weren't very good cars either. Like, there was nothing particularly inspiring with them, and at the same time, they came out with that like weird SI with the fucking shifter on the dashboard.
2002.
Okay, sooner than I expected.
Yeah. So,
but still a 2000s car.
I wasn't too far off.
No, it was in the middle. Really, the RSX was 2002?
Yep. In Europe, that was actually in Japan, that was actually an Integra, apparently.
Well, that makes sense. I don't know why. Why would they not make an Integra in the U.S.?
I don't know, because they were still making the Integra then, I thought. I don't know. Oh, the Celica GT4 is so cool.
The Celica GT4 is cool.
Oh, God.
There was a bunch of cool 90s Japanese cars. It is pretty odd how far away they went from that, because by the time you hit the late 2000s, Japanese cars are just bland, watered down, vanilla fucking, like, church offering plate fucking tasting wafers that are cardboard. And like 10 years before, they had some of the coolest cars on the road.
Also, the Miata came out in the 90s.
Right. Well, the Miata, that was one that I figured you would mention, so I didn't, because I didn't really, this is one of those cars that is, to me, I know it has like this cult following and it's a great handling car and blah, 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 but to me, it's just kind of meh.
They're so fun.
I get it.
You drove one, you'd probably like it a lot more.
I get it. I get the appeal of them. It just, I don't know. It's not me. The 90s.
I'm always so surprised when you look at the FD RX-7 and think that that's a car that was in the 90s.
Because how attractive it looks relative to most cars from
and
that era.
And just like how modern and like just nice looking that car is.
On the outside, yes. On the inside, no.
Except it's got pop-up headlights, common theme of the awesome cars.
Well, unless you retrofit to the other lights,
which you better not.
I don't know. Those lights are way more attractive.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Your opinion is invalid.
In the other car, another European car that you probably overlooked, which I probably would have overlooked too if I had not looked into like, okay, here's a list of 90s cars, is the Clown Shoe.
Those are 90s?
98. So obviously the M Coupe is the official name of the car.
I don't like those.
You don't like them? You're not a Clown Shoe fan?
Even a little bit.
I love one. See, to me, that's a bucket list car for me. Not the regular one, but
shocking.
Really?
Yes. I'm very surprised.
I think it's just because they're weird and like if you have the M version, it performed well.
I think didn't the 99 come with like an S54?
I don't know.
Or is that the newer cars? Because that's a little before the M3 came out.
It feels like it might have been too early, but I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't know BMW that well, so
I thought there was like the last year of those like had a much better engine.
Well, the 99 would have been the second year, so I would guess the last year of them was probably sometime around 03, 02.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, that would be. 2002 was the last year, and then I think that year had the Billy Badass E36 M3 engine. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if that actually counts as Billy Badass, but
I mean relative. Part of the problem I think we have going back about this is that our perspective is skewed because we're looking at today's performance statistics and comparing them to those older cars, right?
Just imagine that, like, you get a model year update from 2001 to 2002, and you go from 240 horsepower to 320 horsepower.
Yeah, it's a big fucking deal.
Just 1 year difference, and you gain 80 horsepower.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Back then, those 300 horsepower back then was like, what?
But that's 2002, so that one doesn't count. You don't get that one.
Which
You get the one with the crappy S50, which
Right,
is the shitty E36 M3 US spec engine.
even the Nissan Maxima from the late 90s was a pretty good performing car, which is why it was in that blue car in the Fast and the Furious, the original one.
Wasn't that red? Oh no, it was blue.
No, it was blue.
I was thinking of the other car.
It was blue. I forget the guy's name. The guy who was
Vince?
it was a douchebag. Yeah,
Vince. Yeah, he's the guy who also had the R33 Skyline, the yellow one.
I don't know. And the second one,
The first one.
First one. I don't know.
It's from the first one.
Anyway, I actually had a guy I knew who had one of those. They were quick. They were quick cars. V6. I think they had something like 270 horsepower from the factory or something like that.
The Lightning must have been right in that era because 2001 was Fast and Furious, right? And there was a Lightning in that.
Was it 01? I don't think it was.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I would bet it was. I feel like if they made me put money on it, I think it was 02 because I think I was out of high school because I had my Mark IV GTI, which I bought new when that movie came out, and I didn't have that during high school for sure because I bought it.
2001. Boom. Wow. I was very confident in that. June 22nd, 2001.
I must have bought that car summer of 2001 then.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. I know I had an 02 GTI. I knew I bought it shortly after the model year launched, but 180 horsepower is a Fury.
Yeah, the Lightning was.
I would say 99 maybe, but I feel like it was much later.
Well, it couldn't have been too much later because it was in Fast and Furious.
Yes, correct.
So,
but I think it was new at that point.
It probably was. I can't see when that started. Oh, there's the old Lightning. That's from the 90s. That was a cool truck. I forgot all about that.
The original one. I don't know. I don't ever remember feeling like I knew anything about the old Lightning. Like I know that it was a thing.
99 to 2004 was the second gen.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought it could have been 99.
Those things were sweet. They had a super truck. My cousin had one of those, and it had side pipes, and it was awesome.
They were badass, for sure. And you can imagine, the kind of trouble you can get in with a truck like that.
But they were still a disgusting generation of F-150, and it was even made worse by having step sides. Just hideous.
I don't hate step sides. I don't understand why truck people hate step sides so much.
Because it makes the bed smaller, first of all.
Well, yeah, that makes sense to me if you're looking at it from a pure...
They're also really ugly.
Utility perspective. I don't think they're necessarily that ugly.
And then if you get one that's like a four-wheel drive one, it's so high off the damn ground that you can't use the step side.
Yeah, like a long bed looks way uglier than a step side. It's more useful.
I don't know.
A long bed truck looks fucking dumb.
A long bed crew cab. Have you ever seen a long bed crew cab Toyota Tundra? It is the weirdest looking vehicle. First gen Toyota Tundra.
Yes.
It is I guess not first gen.
Our Toyota store had one as like a parts delivery vehicle. So yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's the most goofy looking.
They're yucky looking.
There's the part of the bed that's different between the short bed and the long bed. Literally has no styling to it whatsoever.
Right, just straight.
It looks like they just took the Photoshop tool and just stretched it. Yeah. Like that's all they did. They didn't even like sprinkle a little bit of design to it. It was horrible. But tangents aside again.
It's funny. I didn't think we were going to talk this much about trucks, but considering we're not really truck people, but
I like trucks.
I know. I mean, you had a Tacoma. I get it. The other car, I think we haven't mentioned that I personally have an affinity towards is the Mark II GTI, which was obviously an early 90s car, and performance relative to a lot of the cars we talked about is not good. But
at all.
Yeah, at all.
Those are super cool, though, and I like those. And the Mark II GLIs were also cool.
Yes. Mark II Jetta Coupe.
I forget that you could get coupes in the Jetta.
I love the Jetta. A Jetta Coupe is 100% on my bucket list. I probably will own a Jetta Coupe at one point.
Maybe an electric swapped one.
Maybe we do an EV swap Jetta Coupe. That would be a vehicle that would be cool, but only if it's fast.
Yeah, like a Tesla
swap.
Yeah.
Like that. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. But or do like some sort of synchro setup or something like that. All-wheel drive car. It wouldn't otherwise wouldn't really make sense to do anything else. But I'm a very big fan of the Jetta Coupe. And mostly nostalgia probably at this point. Performance wise, there's nothing that good that even came in them. The GLI had the 16 valve, which is a decent engine even for its time.
Well, I think you get a GTI with a 16 valve.
Yeah, same thing. 2-liter 16 valve in the later versions of those cars.
Which they were okay.
They're okay. They're not bad. Relative. I mean, I think they were 150 horsepower. No, not
They
quite.
couldn't have been 150.
No, it was like 135 or 37 or something like that.
Doesn't that make it so much worse that like the Mark IV 1.8 turbos had 150 horsepower?
The original one?
First ones, yeah.
Well, you got to remember the first the 1.8T.
I guess Mark IV is technically 99 too, aren't
It is, yeah, 100%.
That's not on my list.
Yeah.
It's not on my list.
It's not on my list either. Well, the Mark III was too, which the Mark III, in some of the lists I looked at, they had the Mark III GTI listed. And
I guess the VR6
the
is
VR6 Mark III isn't bad. It's just, to me, it's not.
It's so, that I feel like is the epitome of the 90s Germans. Like the Germans had some cool stuff that carried over from the 80s. There's some exceptions, but like a lot of it is like meh, right in the middle of the 90s. And that carries into the 2000s, like
correct.
well into the 2000s.
Well, the early 90s, I don't know if you know this, I presume you probably do, is Volkswagen actually contemplated pulling out of the US in the early 90s.
Well, yeah, and they also had that whole thing around Audi with the unintended acceleration.
They had that too, which has probably inspired them to potentially think about pulling out, which is why if you look, there's no 93 model cars. It was because that was the year that they were thinking about pulling out of the US. And they almost did, and then they didn't.
Makes sense. It's like there's that 1 year of Corvette where there isn't a Corvette for it either. You know what else falls into the 90s category that's, I think, objectively a cool car? The 850 BMW.
I've assumed you were going to mention the 8 Series, so I also didn't mention that one.
With the V12?
Yes, of course, with the V12 engine. It's like every time I see one, I'm like, I can't even believe this is a thing still. Who possibly would have kept up with this thing?
Well, a lot of the ones that you see are the 840s, or 845, the V8 ones.
Right. Yeah. Not most.
The V12 ones.
I may have never seen a 12-cylinder one. It's possible.
It's like the Phaeton with its 12-cylinder.
Right. The W12 Phaeton is not a common one.
They exist, but they're just, you shouldn't buy one. You remember the XJ220? The Jaguar?
No.
In Jaguar. How do you not remember that? That thing was so cool. It was like twin turbo V6. That thing.
Oh yes, I do know that.
That thing.
I don't know it by name. It was like their supercar that they made.
They didn't make a lot of them.
That they made like 60 of them or something.
You know what else is awesome about it?
What?
Pop-up headlights.
The
MR2 also pop-up headlights.
Yes. Well, we established the MR2. The CRX was also early 90s CRX SI.
Well, what about the Del Sol?
Oh shit, I forgot about the Del Sol. So the Del Sol,
I hate them now.
It's so weird because
they were so cool.
Oh my god.
Then.
When I was looking at cars, when I was looking at cars in the 90s, this is back when Wings West was like this shit. And so you'd be like, "Oh, I want to buy this car and put this body kit on it.
I want to add 250 pounds of fiberglass."
Yes. Yeah, it's very poorly made and it'll explode if I hit a skunk, but but I definitely need it. The Del Sol was certainly a car on my list of things that I wish I could have had, and objectively, it's not a good car as far as it looks like it should be fast, but it's objectively not even remotely fast.
Well, they have that weird little like pickup bed that isn't actually a bed, like with the little like tonneau cover. It's so weird. Like I don't know what they could have possibly been thinking when they designed that car.
The Del Sol is a weird car.
It's probably one of the weirdest ones on the list.
The Prelude, if you remember the Prelude, the early 90s Prelude had a digital dash.
Well, the early Preludes were horrible.
Well, Gen M3 Preludes are the one I'm thinking. I think
those
I'm
are
thinking of.
those cars. I feel like for their time had a super modern look to them.
Yes. Yeah.
They were so cool.
Is Gen 3... Gen 3 is the ones with the long headlights, not the one with the blob headlights, right? The squarish, like pulled square headlights.
I don't know generations.
I don't know generations either. I'm just
my Honda knowledge here.
Yeah, me too. 92 to 96 is a generation that I'm thinking of that had a digital dash. The later model, I had no chance of owning.
That's the one that I liked. Was the later model.
The later one?
Yeah.
They had the very, they both had kind of the very flat
Yeah,
back
like
taillights.
the whole like
very long square taillights or
flat,
octangular.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Rectangular.
third gen is the one that has pop-ups. That's 87 to 91.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're talking about?
No. I was talking about the later one. So it must be fourth gen then.
Oh,
the 92
yeah.
to 96.
That's the one with the real ugly front end.
That's the one with digital dash.
Those are ugly.
92 to 96?
Yeah.
I actually like those.
Oh boy.
And then the next one is the one that's less attractive.
What? You are crazy.
I do not like
the
that one.
fifth gen is where it's at.
Nah, I'm out on that. The only thing I liked about the fifth gen is the back looked good.
The body is like practically the same, except worse looking on the older version. And they have that weird like triangular nose thing that I hate.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Oof.
The newest gen.
Well, we can agree to disagree.
I think we'll have to.
One.
I'm not going to be getting a Prelude anytime soon because
I would rock a Prelude. That's fifth gen.
there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, at this point, they would be underwhelming as far as performance goes. And
That's why you slap a Turbski on that.
well, yeah, for sure. I mean, you'd have to.
The H22s actually like take well to it.
Yeah, that was the first H22 engine.
You know what else is technically a 90s car?
What's that?
The S2000. It's a 99.
Is it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that's a sick car.
I feel like that would have been on every list. It should have been on every list if you look at 90s cars, even though it's a 99.
It was shown at the Tokyo Auto Show in 95. And the production started in 2000 or in 99. So, boom.
That is wild.
That's a sick car.
Yeah, I mean, the S2000, obviously. That's a car that, I don't know if it's on my bucket list, but I certainly wouldn't mind owning it.
I've looked at them before I got my current BMW. I was looking for S2000s, but they're still
They're very expensive,
expensive. Yeah, and the ones that you can find in like $6,000 to $7,000 is going to buy you a just ragged out piece of shit.
Yeah, I could see that. That makes complete sense to me. It's a low production car. They were expensive when they were new. They're super impractical.
I'm pretty surprised that that's technically a 90s car.
I would have guessed 2002 if you made me put money on when they came out.
Well, you know what else was cool? And you poo-pooed on it because it was non-US. But another non-US car was like the WRXs in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Those in the 22B.
Yeah, the Subaru. Yeah, the Subaru. Even the Subaru Impreza in the US was a pretty good car.
The 2.5 RS.
Exactly. The 2.5 RS was a pretty good car, and especially
they look cool. I really liked the little coupes.
I really like 2.5 RSs as far as their styling and their aesthetic. They're probably the best looking Subaru that they've ever had. I'm not a fan of the later, like the blob eye and the fucking whatever, the blob, just whatever. They're all gross looking.
I like both of those. The Hawkeyes especially, they have the little roof spoiler. I think is really cool.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, the WRX, when it came out, in 2002, when that came out after the GTI did. And I had a GTI at the time, and a friend of mine bought a WRX. And performance-wise, the WRX crushed a GTI in every way possible. It wasn't even close. So now, when you got in the car, it didn't feel super nice, but...
Well, no, that's
that's Japanese versus German, right? That's the difference of what you pay for.
So, Honda NSX,
yes,
pop-up headlights.
So Acura NSX, but in the US,
the real version.
Yes, the NSX was one that I didn't write down because I assumed you were going to mention. it was there, and they are holding their value pretty strong, the NSX.
I think they sell now for more than they sold when they were new.
Yeah, I saw something that mentioned like, oh, they were new at 60 grand and now they sell for 40, and I was like, that doesn't seem right at all.
I don't think you can get an NSX for 40.
I was thinking I'd be surprised if you can get an NSX for 40 grand. It seems unlikely, and if you could, it probably would not be. I mean, what does a Supra go for?
Like 40 for a shitty one?
For
a turbo one. The non-turbo ones
you can get for like 25, you can get a shitty non-turbo one, like a really
automatic
shitty non-turbo automatic that doesn't have anything good going for it.
You know the transmissions in those things, like in the turbo ones, the manuals sell for like 10 grand?
Really?
Like on their own?
For swaps and stuff?
I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't know. I guess they're super strong and stuff. Do you remember the Isuzu Vehicross?
I do remember the Isuzu Vehicross. That wasn't a 90s car, was it?
99.
I was going to say, that feels like 2000s.
That thing is so weird.
The Isuzu Vehicross, I feel like, was the original Pontiac Aztec.
Except it was weirder than the Aztec and had like...
no practicality whatsoever.
It was like slightly endearing because of how weird it was. Where the Aztec was just straight ugly. It was practical. It was much more practical than the Vehicross was. But I remember very distinctly when I first saw a Vehicross, I was like, what the fuck is that thing? Like, I thought I had to Google it.
What it was.
Because I knew it was an Isuzu. And I just like searched weird looking Isuzu and it popped up. But I thought no doubt in my mind that I saw some old concept vehicle that somebody was driving around, like some ridiculous machine. And I was like, this is a production vehicle?
When was this? You were older, I assume, right?
Yes, it was here.
Yeah.
It was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was probably like 5 years ago.
My God.
I didn't even know they existed.
That's amazing.
I saw this thing and it was thrust into my life. It was yellow. It had chrome wheels.
First of all, every Isuzu Vehicross was yellow.
I've seen another one.
I know there were silver ones. I don't know what other colors they had.
Two
I know there
around
silver.
Here. There's one that has like big like off-road tires on it and they're chrome wheels. And I saw this thing. I'm like, what the absolute fuck is that?
I'm not sure about this. I think all of the Vehicrosses had like kind of off-roady tires.
Well, that was their whole thing.
That was kind of
this had like aftermarket.
Oh, like really, it had like 34s on it.
Yeah, it was big, like big tires. I saw that.
Yes, the Vehicross. I for sure remember the Vehicross because I can't imagine the reaction. It makes sense to me. Like,
I had no idea that it existed.
Your reaction of you didn't know it existed and you thought you had just seen a prototype of some car that should have never been made.
Yeah, there's no possible way they could have made that car.
Who would buy this?
Yeah.
And like, oh, there are people who bought this.
Not many.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see what the production sales numbers. I will say our conversation from last week where you talked about the production of that Aston Martin.
They made like 30 of them.
It fucking blew me away that they could sell 300 of a car they actually chose to make. Like, it legitimately blows my mind.
Well, let's be fair. They probably would have sold more of them if they built it and were committed to building it, whereas they piggybacked off the Scion, so they didn't have like all the tooling and everything to like make the chassis and...
I mean, I don't even know what that means. I think they're not committed to it. I think
97 and 99, the Vehicross was fully in the 90s.
Yes. Okay. I would, if you made me guess, I would have guessed newer, but okay. 97 is pretty strong in the 90s. It got a foothold.
Torque on demand, produced by Borg Warner, 4-wheel drive system. I wonder if it was
Haldex?
A precursor to Haldex.
Really?
It had teeth in the grill. God, this thing is so good.
Oh, it's disgusting. If you were on the verge, if you were nauseous a little bit, you would throw up if you saw one.
I don't know.
100%.
Like, I would own one of these.
You would see, now it's ironic. It's very different than back then. If you spent fucking 40 grand for that thing.
I would not have bought one.
Well, that's my point.
No. Base price was $28,900.
Yeah, that was a lot of money for 1997.
I'm aware of that.
You could buy a Supra in 1997 for fucking 28 grand.
Sales were intentionally limited with only 5,958 vehicles.
Wow, that's actually a lot.
1,805 were produced for the domestic Japanese market, and 4,153 were sold in the United States.
4,100. That seems like a lot to me. I mean, how many? I think Mark IV R32, they only made 5,000.
Yeah. But that was 1 year, though. Think of that.
That
That was
one
year
What
of
was
production.
It, 3 years? 97, 98, 99?
It says 97 through 2001, but elsewhere in this thing it says 97 and 99. So there's a couple,
It's conflicting information.
discrepancies here.
Yes.
But it's such a cool car. It's so ugly. It is so unbelievably, impossibly ugly. But
by the way, I just got a text message that said that they thought Screwball Whiskey by itself was amazing.
somebody on my Facebook posted about how awesome this was and they needed it in their life and they tried it and they loved it. And I just replied to them, it was literally the most vile thing I've ever tasted. It was horrific. I actually have PTSD sitting next to this bottle.
I feel like I think it's just because we had old fashions that were like just on their face, supposed to be like a very liquor drink. And it was so tainted by like weirdness.
It was so tainted. It was like we were licking Satan's taint is what it was like. It was horrible.
I didn't like it. I can attest to that. We have a lot of it, so we're for sure going to be trying it again. I sent you that drink for redemption. I legitimately think that will be good.
I don't know about that, but we'll see. You guys are going to have to stay tuned for that one.
TBD.
Maybe I'll throw up because it's even worse than the original one.
We'll have to get a bucket.
We will have to have or a barf bag from an airplane. You know what else was 90s? The 240s. 240 SX.
Oh, I didn't even think about 240s.
Yeah, S14s.
Well, there was a bunch of
S13s
those,
too, early ones. I think.
a bunch of those Europe or not Japanese models that didn't come here that everybody talked about.
No, we got those in the US.
No, those we did. Yeah, the 240 we did.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the cooler versions.
Yeah, the S15 came out in 99.
Yeah,
so.
that was the S15 to me is the only one that actually looks like super attractive.
I like the S13s a lot. The hatchbacks, the coupes I'm okay with. The convertibles I hate. The S14, the later ones with the kooky front end, which is I think that's the one with the like slanty eyes, the angry ones. Those look good. The early ones are kind of plain with the blobby headlights, but
yeah, that car, the 300ZX was also, there was two generations of 300Zs in the 90s.
Didn't those have four-wheel steer? Or am I thinking of the 3000 GT?
No, they did have four-wheel steer. 3000 GT also had four-wheel steer.
That was big in the 90s.
Yeah, everybody loved four-wheel steer. They were like, oh, you know, we're going to make something that brakes a lot.
You know the only thing better than that? Pop-up headlights.
Well, everything had pop-up headlights.
The 3000 GT did not have pop-up headlights, did it?
Some of them did.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I was thinking of the...
There were versions that didn't. I think those were Japanese spec headlights that were non-pop-ups.
Oh, God, the 928.
How about the Lamborghini Diablo?
The Diablo. I didn't like the Diablos. I take that back. I've gone from liking the Diablo to not liking the Diablo. When in the 90s, man, the Diablo was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the Murcielago came out and I was like, oh my God, that's so much better than the Diablo. Uh-huh. But they had the Diablo, I think it was the VT, that had like the wing and like more power and stuff. It was cool. But I feel like the Diablo lost a little bit of its appeal from the Countach.
Yes, for sure. The Countach was such a cool car. And the Diablo was it had kind of weird proportions to it a little bit.
But it's a V12. How can you not love it?
Yeah.
Also pop-up headlights.
It's not a bucket list car for me. The Lotus Esprit is legit a bucket list car for me.
Oh, we forgot to mention the Dodge Stealth. Isn't that part of that whole...
it was part of the 3000 GT the family,
yep.
Which is so wild to me that Mitsubishi and Dodge were like, you know what we'll do? What Japanese company, American company? Let's make the same cars.
Might as well. I mean, Why not?
Why invest in R&D? Just rebadge the same car.
You know, the Esprit has pop-up headlights too.
Yes, the Esprit does have pop-up headlights, but it's also a very attractive car.
Pop-up headlights make the car attractive. That's why it's attractive.
Kind of. The body lines of the Esprit are super nice. And it's way more balanced. It's kind of like the Diablo, but the Diablo has like weird proportions, and the Esprit is like...
The Esprit is like a better-looking Diablo.
Yes, it's like more balanced. It doesn't have like this weird like front and rear that almost look like they were like cut in half and then separated from each other.
I forgot about that fucking sweet metallic purple that the Diablos came in.
I don't even know if I knew that.
Oh man, it's like the color that they all should have been. It's like that color.
Oh yeah.
I had a model car Diablo that was like that. It's all I completely forgot about it.
Coming back to you now?
Oh yeah, that color is. I also had one of those Bugatti EB110s.
Oh yeah,
those were cool cars too. They had 4 turbos, but
yeah, quad turbo car.
But like,
I feel like that's a car that like is not really worth mentioning for the 90s because what they were like,
I don't know,
completely like a dozen made or something like that.
604 horsepower, 3.5 liter V12 with 4 turbos in a carbon fiber chassis.
It's so wild. 3.5 liter
V12. 604 horsepower,
which at the time obviously was insane.
They made 139 of them.
I saw a video recently that they had some guy in a Hellcat who was outrunning the news helicopter as he was being chasing.
That's awesome.
Because they kept talking about like, we're trying to keep up with them. The police have already had to pull back because they run out of fuel. And they're like, we're traveling 120 miles an hour and he's pulling away from us.
We can't keep up with this boat that's on the road. Well, a piece of yellow thing just flew off. Oh, it's a splitter guard. He's gonna be impaled by the splitter guard.
Yeah. That is pretty wild though. That there's cars legitimately now that will outrun helicopters.
Well, helicopters have a speed limit of like it's right in that 120
yes,
range.
I think that is the range.
It's actually not even like
it's not that hard.
Most cars would be able to outrun a helicopter.
If you have no governor, you could, but most cars in traffic couldn't get going fast enough that they could accelerate fast enough. And this guy was like weaving through traffic and fucking driving on shoulders and all kinds of crazy wild stuff. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Oh man, we were on BMWs earlier. We didn't even talk about the E39 M5.
Right, one of the arguably the best M5.
Well, I don't know. The V10 ones are pretty freaking cool too.
They are cool, yes.
And the new ones, the V8 twin turbos, are also pretty cool.
But those, I feel like they don't have the. I guess the early 2000s ones were probably the best ones, right? The V10 ones.
Yeah. Well, they had like very divisive styling when those first came out.
The performance of that car really set it apart from the market. And
the E39 was just so cool, so good looking.
Good looking car, really.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. The other car, if we're going to talk about non-US cars, the RS2.
Oh, I was just about to bring that up. I was looking there at 2 Audis to bring up. The RS2, super cool. All the Porsche bits on it.
Yeah. Had
Porsche brakes, Porsche wheels. The valve cover said Porsche. I think the intake said Porsche. 5-cylinder turbo wagon. What's not to love? Except it doesn't have pop-up headlights.
It doesn't have pop-up headlights. At the time, I think it was said to be the fastest wagon ever made.
That would make sense.
Which would make sense because obviously how many fast wagons do they make back then? The RS6 and stuff like that didn't exist then. It is pretty funny. When I was looking through some of this, I saw like 0 to 60 times of some of these cars. And it's like the supercars back in the day. It was
5.7.
Yeah, it was like 4.6 was like a really fast 0 to 60. And it's just like, I don't know, I think Nathan did an S4 pull that was like 3.2 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that was kind of in that era, the Audi S8, which on its own was just kind of a meh car. But when you couple it with the Transporter movie, you bring the S8 out and the thing was whipping jumps and drifts and stuff.
I feel like the only thing that made any of those movies, like those cars, good was the movies. Because like the S8, I think I looked at it, had like 350 horsepower.
I don't even think it had really hardly any more horsepower than the A8s, which also had a 4.2. Like, I think it was just like a trim level.
It was like a trim package, right? Now, whereas the S cars, any S car now is significantly different than the alternatives.
Well, I don't know. I think the A8 has a 4-liter twin turbo, and the S8 now has a 4-liter twin turbo. But
but tuning is very different.
They are, but they're not significantly different in terms of engine.
Engine, right? The output is different. Yeah, if you want to keep your warranty.
The McLaren F1 also came out in the 90s.
Yes, that was on one of the lists I saw. Is like it was the number one car, and to me, it's very a meh. To me,
yeah, I mean, it was cool because it was, the fastest car in the world at that time, which obviously that's objectively cool. I mean, to have the fastest car in the world is cool.
It for sure is, but it really is for people like us that are car people. We're looking for attainable things that we love, not like it's the reason why, our demographic of customers, they don't give a shit about supercars, is that even some of them could probably afford a low-end supercar, but like they don't really care about shit like that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that car has kind of a cult following on it. It also falls into that weird category because it's got are you familiar with how you sit in that car?
No. You probably have to sit.
You sit in the middle of the car, and it's a 3-seater. You sit in the middle center, and there's 2 seats behind you on either side of you.
So you're pushed forward, and your passengers would be behind you.
Yes, it's bizarre.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
You know why they probably did it? Germans. I'm 100% sure of it.
They're not German.
McLaren.
They're not German.
Oh, it's not. It was Mercedes. Oh, Mercedes bought McLaren.
It's also not Mercedes.
Right. That was before Mercedes bought McLaren.
I don't know if Mercedes ever bought McLaren.
Well, isn't that how Mercedes pulled McLaren stuff in?
I don't think so.
No?
No, they had a F1 partnership.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
It had a BMW. I'm pretty sure it had a BMW.
Not German? What are they?
V12 in them. They're English.
I guess I was assuming it was a weight distribution thing.
It probably is. Yeah, I'm
it's like, if you have 2 passengers, they'll be evenly distributed behind you.
I'm pretty sure that weight distribution is what that was.
And you won't be able to talk to them at all.
There's so many good things from the 90s. How do we stop? There's the Ford SHO, the Taurus.
So I didn't mention the Taurus SHO yet, but I was going to because that was a car that I legitimately, 100% legit wanted an SHO when I was buying cars because the SHO was like a legitimately performing vehicle for its time. Like the early 90s SHO was a kind of attainable car. Like not really because I didn't really have that kind of money, but perceived to be attainable for me to get.
It wasn't so ridiculously unattainable
that I couldn't actually have it. Right, yes. And it was actually a fast car for its time.
Oh, we didn't even mention a car that you had, the Corrado.
Oh God, the Corrado.
The Corrados were kind of cool.
The Corrados were for sure cool.
They were only cool for the styling and the spoiler would go up and down. Yeah. That was basically all that made it cool.
The Corrado was objectively
not cool.
Objectively, performance-wise, probably not a great car. Although, to be fair, the Corrado ended in 93? 94? 94 was the last Corrado, I think.
Yeah, no, it was 95 in Canada.
In Canada, yes. 95 in Canada. So, 94 was the last car, which, to be fair, for its time, it wasn't really a poor-performing car.
It had 180 horsepower with the VR. And then you had a supercharged version, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, except for when the supercharger explodes.
Well, that didn't happen when it was 94. New, yeah.
I don't know about that. Superchargers don't last. The G Scroll superchargers don't last very long.
Yeah, the Grenade 60s, but that's besides the point.
So the Corrado is a car that I have owned. I do still love the Corrado to this day. I'll probably own another Corrado. I didn't even think about that car, which is bizarre because we obviously are in that space. But
and you owned it,
and I owned one. Yeah, I like the Corrado. I think aesthetically, compared to Scirocco, it's a much more attractive car.
Well, that was another car that I feel like was very far ahead of its time in styling.
The Corrado?
Yeah, you would think that car, if you knew nothing about it, would be late 90s, maybe early.
Yeah, maybe mid-90s, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say mid to late 90s, and it was early 90s. Mm-hmm. It was definitely a solid 3 or 4 years ahead of its time in terms of styling, I think. But, other car along the lines that we mentioned, You mentioned the Mark IV Supra, but there was also its Lexus brother, the Lexus
The
SC.
GS? Oh, the SC.
Yeah, the two-door,
I didn't know the
which had
GS.
they had the SC300 and the SC400. The 300 being naturally aspirated 2JZ, and the 400 being a four liter V8.
Yeah.
They were V8s.
Yeah.
But they were you can get those relatively cheap, and it's basically the same car as a Supra.
Right. You don't really want one, but
nobody. The reason they're cheap is because nobody wants them. And they're ugly. But back then, they were honestly kind of cool. It was like this big coupe that, like, had some style for the time. The styling on that car did not hold up like some of the other cars. Like the FD, still beautiful now. This definitely looks like it's from the 90s.
There's certainly a lot to styling to say that different things hold up differently, which, I mean, you look at an FD, and again, this is my opinion, but not yours, the Supra, the Mark IV Supra.
Boring and ugly.
They withstand the test of time and are still attractive cars.
Well, that's like the R34 Skyline, I think was the 99 is the first year for that.
The R34 Skyline.
I know you like that. I don't.
Yes.
I personally, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't hate it, but like it doesn't do anything for me. But that car almost looks like it could be made
today, right?
Maybe 5 years ago,
right?
Like that could be a 2010 car.
Mm-hmm. For sure, that car is light years ahead. I feel like the R34 Skyline might even be the one car that comes to mind that seems so far ahead of its time. It could be created 10 years later, and it wouldn't be like, ugh, what is this?
Right, and that's the point. Like, and the other, like I feel like the R32 to the R33 Skyline was a really kind of gradual change.
Yes,
but in the way that it is, like you look at them now, the R33 looks more modern. It is more modern than the R32, but I'd say more so than it initially seemed, where it's still kind of like the R32 was available in the 80s and it doesn't look like a car from the 80s. Like,
no, it looks like a 90s car.
Japan was really ahead of its time with styling, and then they kind of, in the late 90s, with the exception of the FD and the R34, they kind of like in the 2000s tapered off into just vanilla land.
Well, I guess, yes, because if you think
for
about
most of it, because like the MR2 got extra weird.
Yes, I hated the later MR2s.
But then they killed that off, and then it was all bland from Toyota.
Did they make anything good after 2000?
They had at the time, what was cool, the Celica that had like that GT action body kit or whatever.
It was a girl's car.
Yes, but like
it was a girl's car.
They tried to make it cool with the wing and stuff and the body kit.
My cousin had one of those. We used to always make fun of him for having a girl's car.
My cousin had one also, but
it was a non-GTS and it was an automatic, and we used to make fun of him for having a girl's car.
But those in the time frame, I guess, which that was 2000s, but I was young then. Yeah. I thought those were kind of cool, and they were
good-looking cars.
They had the commercials around them that were cool, and they just never ended up actually being a cool car.
No, interior-wise, they were actually, like, exterior and interior, very cool cars. They didn't perform. They had nothing good about them. Even the GTS was kind of meh.
Yeah, they didn't have anything cool after that. Like, they killed off the Supra. They had the MR2, and it was this weird-looking convertible thing. And then that's all Toyota had. Honda, they still had their SI, which was weird.
Yeah, that like weird bubble thing with the shifter dingle in the middle.
Yeah, and then the S2000, that existed. That was still cool.
Cult classic.
Yeah. What else? I mean, Lexus didn't come out with anything cool. The IS300 I actually kind of liked.
The IS300 actually wasn't bad.
Did that come?
It was in 2000.
Late 90s, maybe?
I want to say it was actually 2000. Look it up. 2000. The one Lexus, actually, when you mentioned the other SC model, I think the SC430 was the first hardtop convertible. I think it was the first hardtop convertible.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
Oh my God, it was late in the 2000s or mid in 2000s.
That
maybe.
is Florida, like in a car form.
Oh, it does feel so. The guy I knew a golf pro when I was in my early teens. I worked at a driving range. And a golf pro had one who was like a a like baller, flashy kind of golf pro guy, and he had one. And I remember at the time they were like 60 or 70 grand.
They were a lot, and
they were like really expensive.
They were V8 and made like 15 horsepower and automatic.
Yes.
They look like a bubble.
Yes,
I remember very distinctly. I was living in Florida at the time that those cars came out, and we would go to Fort Lauderdale for vacation, and it was always, that's kind of like a expensive area, so you'd see like Ferraris and stuff. And I, as a little kid, I was like so excited to see all this stuff, and Lotus Esprit Turbos I saw there, and then every other car that wasn't a supercar was an SC400 or SC430, sorry,
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a perfect like Boca Raton,
it's
like country club.
Yeah, it's Florida. You have money,
douchebag.
Yeah,
like you have money, but you have no taste. You drive an SC430.
It's perfectly embodied in the fact that it had those gold badges, which is exactly what.
But I think that was like a package. You get like the gold package.
I don't think they
it's
existed without that package.
You're like an extra douchey person. You definitely need gold badges.
Yeah, so I think that's that car is just, I had forgotten all about that car. Now you've just brought
I've drummed it up.
By the way, 98 for the IS300.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so the IS300 was a pretty legit car for its time.
That was a good looking car too.
It was a good looking, for sure. For the 90s, that was a great looking car.
I really wanted one of those things for a while. Like,
yeah, they were
those were
though.
cool. Yeah, and they had a 2JZ non-turbo, but still cool cars. You can get them in manual. They had them in that really disgusting wagon that you could get. You didn't know about that?
I don't know if I remember an IS wagon.
Oh my goodness, they were horrible.
I remember the IS, and I remember that being a really attractive car. At the time, it did really well. And then it's so funny because after the...
Yeah. It is not a good looking vehicle.
You know what that looks like? It looks like the Subaru.
I like the Subaru.
That looks like a fucking Subaru, all right?
It's a better...
By the way, you haven't
Subarus.
named a single Saab from the 2000s, and that was like their best, from the 90s.
I was going to say, we're not in the 2000s. I like Saabs from the 2000s.
The 2000 Saabs were better.
I would have named... The Saabs from the 90s looked like they were from the 80s. They were all horrible.
They did look like they were from the 80s.
I think that is the
I can't imagine why they went out of business.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that's the era that put Saab out of business. Those were terrible. Look at that. That is a 1995 Saab.
I know, they were so bad, and the engines were fucking backwards, and nobody worked on them because they were terrible. And it's like,
but you could get a turbo, bro.
We get a turbo, but the engine, the serpentine belt is at the firewall.
Even better when you get the convertible version.
And it's teal too.
Yeah, of course. They're all teal.
By the way,
how about green with a tan top?
Yeah, well, that's
yummy.
I fucking hate green cars, and I hate the idea that everyone's like, "Oh, British racing green now. It's so amazing." It's like green is an ugly fucking car. All right, let's just be honest and say green cars are ugly unless it's like Viper green, like really brilliant green cars. Okay, cool.
That one Golf R that we saw at SEMA was green. I liked it. I like British racing green in certain aspects.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, certain cars I'm into. Like NA Miatas, you could get them in a green that I don't remember what the name is right now, but it was pretty cool. It's very similar to British racing. I think it is British racing green, actually, is the name.
I hate green cars, and I hate blue cars.
Well,
but not all blues and not all greens.
Everybody that's at Wookiees that hears that is going to be mad at you now.
But not those blue cars.
Oh, not those.
And the same thing is like was it Caribbean blue? That's more of a green color. It's
Phoenix yellow. That is baby shit green.
That's not what I actually. I know what is Phoenix? Is that the BMW color, right?
Yeah.
The E36 color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that color. I think it's a fucking cool color.
It has grown on me a lot, but I still don't like it.
I don't think it's a car that if I were buying a new one, I'd be like, you know what I want? You know what I need? I need that one that looks like mustard mixed with a little bit of dirt or diarrhea,
or both.
Or both.
Dirty diarrhea. The diarrhea that you get after eating a lot of dirt.
Yeah, I can't unless the blue is unique in some way. I can't do it. Like my TT was blue.
I don't know.
I fucking hated my TT.
Well, TTs have the worst selection of blues that exists in the world.
True. I don't disagree.
Was it the light blue?
No.
Or the dark blue?
The dark blue.
Okay. Well, at least you had that.
So
the
my
light blue is the most. Did you have the blue interior
Yes.
with the blue top?
Yes.
Oh.
It was blue on blue on blue. I fucking hated it.
Well, that's your first problem.
It's like, why?
And you're the one who bought that.
Well, I bought it. I don't even know why I bought it now that I think about it. Like,
Cruising
it's
down
hard.
the strip wanting to pick up some dudes.
I was looking to flex and look super cool.
Yeah, it's an Audi. It's got a turbo.
Yeah, it was not fast, but for its time, it was not slow.
Was it a 225?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was a manual 225.
At least you had that.
It was a convertible.
Did it have it didn't have baseball because it was blue.
Yeah, no, it wasn't baseball. If it had baseball, it would have been way better. But still, the blue on blue is fucking gross.
It is gross. That's what the car that the idiots over there sold wasn't it? Wasn't it blue on blue?
No, that was just a hard top.
Oh no, but it was tan. It was gray inside, not tan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
No, beige interiors are legit the worst. I'd rather have a blue interior than a gray one.
Yeah, but
or a beige one.
But then you get brown. I like brown interiors.
Yes.
Like dark brown.
Teak brown. Like Touaregs had that teak brown color, baseball leather. You know, like all these brown colors are the brown colors are good. Beige is the shit worst interior color because it gets dirty so easy.
I know. Or even if you keep it clean and you just wear blue jeans a lot,
It just looks shitty.
your seats turn blue.
Yeah, it's fucking garbage. By the way, anybody who likes tan interiors,
Sorry.
terrible choice.
Not
all right,
sorry.
bad decision.
Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so we're getting up there in time now. To wrap up, you can pick two cars from the 90s. What are they and why? Two cars.
For sure, Lotus Esprit twin turbo
So that's your weekend car.
is going to be my weekend car. Can we do really daily cars from the 90s? It seems like a terrible life choice. Nobody cares if I get to work.
Maybe like weather isn't horrible, but not daily, but not somewhat regularly.
I feel like
Let me guess. Mark IV Supra.
it has to be a Mark IV Supra.
Yep.
It's the only car, like an FDR X7 would be a car that I would love to own. Also is a bucket list car for me, but owning a rotary car as a potential car that you'd ever want to drive for anything other than just like a trip that you can take on a weekend is a terrible choice.
Yeah, I don't know. So for me, I think I would go with probably an R32 GTR would be one of them.
Okay, attainable now. How much are they?
GTRs are still expensive.
A lot, right?
Yeah, they're
40 grand.
Yeah, they're in the 30-40 range for GTRs.
So you can get an Esprit for probably the same price as a GTR is.
Yeah, probably in the same ballpark.
Esprit is objectively a cooler car than a GTR.
I don't know. The GTR is going to be way more reliable.
Yes.
Not even close.
Less attractive, less attention.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The Skylines have gotten a lot
I guess
now.
people kind of get their like imported boners
In the
going on.
90s, you would have been right, but now I'd say they're probably pretty similar.
The import boners are pretty hard.
Because now I feel like if you're whipping it in an Esprit twin turbo, people look at you and be like, "Look at this guy. He couldn't afford a modern supercar, so he's in this old thing."
I feel like I would love to drive around.
Oh no, I agree. I would love to have one of those.
And I would have to have like always. I feel like if you drive an Esprit Turbo, you have to have a tire that appears period correct for the vehicle.
See, that's why I wish we were doing 80s. 80s. Maybe we'll do that in a future episode.
Some fucking Reebok pumps.
Yeah, we can be dressed up. I should have asked Nathan to borrow that jacket he's been wearing for this episode. But okay, so R32 GTR, I think I would take. And then there's so many choices on cars that I'm like hyped on from the 90s. FD would be up there. Maybe if I had a daily, maybe an Integra Type R, although I'd be worried about it being stolen.
Too valuable daily.
Yeah. So is the GTR though. They're up there.
But they're more common, right, than a Type R?
Yeah, I mean, they are.
They're imported, but they're more common.
With the GTR, you get the benefit that there's other Skylines. They're not like crazy different looking. So, man, I don't know don't know if I'd be able to narrow it down to another one. How about it? Okay. We'll take the GTR, and then for a practical vehicle, I'll take the Typhoon, or no, the Cyclone.
Cyclone.
Yeah, the pickup. That's not even where I intended to go with that, but I think that's a good
It
pick.
felt right.
Then
It
I can
felt
put
good.
some tires in it. I can 300 pounds
Haul
in the
some
bed.
stuff around.
Yeah,
I get it.
Exactly.
I get it.
I think those would be my two choices. If you ask me in 5 minutes, they'll probably both be different. But that's what I'm going with right now. Locked in.
Final answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, catch us next week. We're going to try to do some variety in terms of things like this, 90s themes or things like that, instead of just maybe covering some news topics. So give us some feedback as far as things you like, things you don't in terms of topic, because sometimes news topic seems relevant per se, but I think obviously I think we probably had more fun doing 90s cars because of the nostalgia.
Oh, yeah. Total throwback. There's so many cars I just forgot about that, like the Dodge Stealth, like that car even existed, or the Plymouth Prowler, like the Isuzu Vehicross.
Yeah,
there's so many cool cars. But yeah, let us know what you think about this. You can comment on some places or send us email.
Carswithcocktails@gmail.com and at carswithcocktails on Instagram. And let us know what you think.
Yeah, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks so much. See you next week.
Peace.